Week number 5, Raymond Chandler's Red Wall. Raymond Chandler's Red Wind. On this video, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to slow down a minute and, as best I can, go through a quick synopsis of the entire story. Because thinking about it, in these past few videos I put out, I've spoken as if I assumed that the average person watching this video had read the story and was already familiar with it. But it occurs to me that most people who watch this either are not going to have read Red Wind, and even if they have, it's probably so long ago, or not as frequently as I have, so they're probably not as familiar with the individual elements as I would be speaking about it. So anyways, we start off, there's Detective John Damos. He's giving us a lowdown on everything. And there is a new bar, a new cocktail lounge that is opened across the street from his apartments. He lives in the Bergland apartments. So he goes over there, he's chatting with the bartender, introduces himself. And there's this drunk at the other end of the bar who's being a bit of a hassle, but he's not too bad. When this well-dressed guy walks into the bar, and he's looking for a woman who's dressed in a very particular way, a woman wearing a bolero jacket and a blue crepe silk dress, or however the order of the words is there. Anyways, no such woman has been in the bar the whole evening, so this guy's about to leave when the drunk at the end of the bar perks up, and he calls out a name, Waldo. And the dark guy, the well-dressed guy who'd entered, he turns around and he and the drunk recognize each other, and then the drunk pulls a .22 pistol out of his coat, and he shoots this Waldo fellow dead, just right there. Yeah, he holds the gun on John Damos and the bartender as he makes his way out of the bar, and he steals the car that had belonged to this Waldo character to make his getaway. Which John Damos, he rushes out trying to get the license plate number, but he has no luck in that. The bartender calls the cops, and some patrolmen walk in just to see what's up, and then the detectives show up. And this guy, Waldo, he has a lot of money in his pockets, but no driver's license, no real identification, so they're not quite sure who he is just yet. And the police detectives show up, and there's principally 2 police detectives in this story. There's Kopernik and Ibarra. Kopernik's the one who gets the most time in the story. He's sort of a brute, sort of a roughneck type of cop. Not necessarily no nonsense, but just, everything's got to be according to the way he wants it. So he gets the scoop on what went down at the bar from John Damos. And that's about the end of things there. There's not really a lot to go on. So John Damos is just going to return to his apartment. It's late in the evening. It's about, 9 o'clock or something like that. John Damos lives up on the 4th floor. He's taking the elevator up. The elevator doors open, and who's standing in the hallway but is a woman in a blue crepe silk dress and a bolero jacket. As far as John Damos is concerned, he's not quite sure what a bolero jacket is, but he thinks this is what it looks like. He manages to convince this woman to return to his apartment so he can give her the lowdown, telling her that the police are looking for her. And he has got enough sense to know that she looks nervous, she looks shifty, she doesn't want to be caught out by the police, at least not just yet. So they're in John Damos' apartment. He's trying to get the lowdown, and she reveals 3 key points of information. Yeah, her name is Lola Barcelay. Her husband's name is Frank C. Barcelay. The man who was shot in the bar, who was called Waldo by the drunk, is a man whose name is actually Joseph. Well, actually, he gave her the name Joseph Choates, and he used to be in her employ. And that Joseph Choates had stolen a set of pearls from her, and these pearls were a gift from some past lover. Stan Phillips. Yeah, Stan Phillips, who she knew in the past, gave her these pearls that were apparently worth around $15,000. Joseph Choates was holding them ransom for $5,000 payout because Lola Barcelay did not want to tell her husband where the pearls had come from. All right, or really how valuable they were. She told her husband that they were just costume jewelry. That's going on. As they're speaking, she's about to leave, but then they hear the elevator making a racket in the hallway and footsteps coming up the hallway. And John almost just has this hunch about what's not really sure what's going to happen. He just knows, he just feels like there's trouble coming his way. And so he has her duck into the side room. He goes to open the door, and he opens the door, and it's the drunk from the bar. Except he's not in disguise. He just altered his clothing enough so that he looks different. And he's coming. He's holding a gun on John Dalmas, and he's here to eliminate the witnesses. He's already followed the barkeeper home, but he's going to eliminate John Dalmas first because he figures he's the more dangerous of the two if it comes to somebody getting on the witness stand. And while he's there, he's got the gun on Dalmas right up against his chest. And in this, Lola Barsali is able to sneak out of the room, and she has a pistol of her own, and she puts it into the drunk's back. Later, we learn this guy's name is Al Tessalor. She jams this gun into Al Tessalor's back, and that's enough for John Dalmas to get the drop on him and kind of sort him out. Lola Barsali scampers off, just out of the way, and John Dalmas is feeling grateful towards Lola Barsali for saving his life. And because of that, and because she's in trouble, he does not want to involve her in the incident any more than he has to, in order to protect her reputation, her wishes in this whole scrambled affair. So he calls out the police. He gets with Detective Kopernik. He says, "Hey, I got your shooter here on my living room floor. Come over and get him." So Kopernik comes over. John Dalmas feeds him this line about how he, John Dalmas alone, captured Hal Tessalor when he came over to sort out all the loose ends. And it's just this tangled story. Kopernik's not buying it. Kopernik is for sure that there must have been a third person in the room besides Dalmas and besides Tessalor. There must have been a third person in the room in order to get everything squared away. So John Dalmas invents this story about some kid he knows that's in a spot of trouble, came over to ask for help, and everything happened the way it happened, except it was someone besides Lola Barsali. And Kopernik is satisfied with that, so they concoct this story whereby Kopernik will take responsibility. Kopernik will take the fame and the glory that comes with capturing Al Tessalor by taking the spot of Lola Barsali, this mysterious kid in the story. So everything will happen pretty much as it happened, except Kopernik gets to be the man on top. He gets to be the hero, which is fine. But all that necessitates that John Dalmas, he goes downtown to the DA's office, and they ask him a bunch of questions about the stuff that happened at the bar and the stuff that happened in his apartment and different things. So he gets all that sorted out. And on his way back to his apartment, it's getting close to about midnight, he sees Lola Barsali sitting in her car in the street. And so he hails him over, and he goes over to talk to her. And he says, "Hey, you saved my life. Everything I can do for you in any capacity is bought and paid for. I'm yours," right? So she asks him to go to Joseph Choate's apartment. Joseph Choate, this Waldo, had the apartment one floor down and across the hall from John Dalmas. They were living in the same apartment building, which is why Lola Barsali was in the apartment building to begin with, because she was looking for Joseph Choate, not realizing that all the police activity out on the street earlier had been because of Joseph Choate's murder. So she asked John Dalmas to go to Joseph Choate's apartment and look for the pearls, if they could possibly be in there. John Dalmas agrees, even though he's pretty sure the pearls are not going to be in there. He goes up to the apartment, he forces his way in, and he's looking around, being careful not to disturb things or leave any sign that he had been there specifically, when he finds a dead man hidden behind the Murphy bed. And it's a short South American looking guy. And he's just looking through his pockets, and he finds a big 9mm pistol hanging under the guy's arm, and he's got bruises around his neck. So John Dalmas figures that for some reason this guy shows up at Joseph Choate's apartment. The two get into conflict, and Joseph Choate, by necessity, has to strangle this guy. Probably not intending to, but just in the moment, that's what happened. That's what sent him out onto the street to try and find Lola Barzilai instead of waiting for her in the apartment, because he didn't want anybody looking at that. So he, and that's what set everything else in motion. John Damas, he goes back out on the street, talks with Lola Barzilai. They share a moment. He tells her, "Hey, I couldn't find the pearls." He's not going to tell her about the dead body. When they part ways, he's out on the street, and he notices the car that was in front of them has a dealership sticker still in the window. It's a rental car. And he's looking at it, and it's familiar to him. So he goes back up to Joseph Choate's apartment, and he goes back into the pockets of the guy who's dead, hanging off the Murphy bed. And sure enough, like the car keys in the pocket match the dealership sticker hanging in the window. He says, "Okay, I'll just return this car because the address is on it." And he goes and he takes the car up to that address and knocks on the door. And there's this Russian woman that answers. And John Damas more or less forces his way into the house. He's not being aggressive with it. He's just being very firm and kind of pushing his way inside the house. And he gets into a thing. He tells this John Damas tells this Russian woman that the short guy is dead. She's aghast at this, and that brings in the man of the house. He's this big burly football player type. He's got apparently holding a gun in his pocket. Whether or not he was, I don't know. But he says he's holding a gun in his pocket on John Damas. And the two of them get to talking, and John Damas more or less tells the story as it happened. Not the whole truth. He leaves out Lola Barzilai. He leaves out a lot about Kopernik and everything that happened in the apartment building. But he leads this fellow to believe, John Damas leads this fellow to believe that he was paid to observe Joseph Choate and just keep an eye on him in his job as a private investigator. And thereby, through that angle, managed to find all this other information that led him to the house. So, what John Damas learns from this guy is that this fellow, well, I'll just go and spell it. At the end of the scene, we learned that this fellow is Frank C. Barzilai. This is Lola's husband, who's been fooling around on the side with this Russian woman under the guise of late night meetings at his architectural firm. So Frank Barzilai had receipts for items that were bought by this Russian woman in his briefcase, that when he returned from a trip to Argentina and found this Joseph Choate in his apparently in his employ, he fired Choate. Choate managed to get into his briefcase before then, find the receipts, and pull them out, and was using that to blackmail Frank Barzilai. Barzilai hired the dead guy in the apartment. Frank Barzilai hired him because he knew him from trips to South America and had gotten him a job at a roulette wheel in a certain casino. And so he had ties with this guy, and he hired him to take the blackmail money, the payment, to Joseph Choate. And what John Damas and this guy more or less figure out, or more or less assume what happened, is that the South American got a little greedy. He decided he was going to use a little bit of force on Joseph Choate when he didn't need to. And that's when the two got in a fight, and he ended up dying, and Joseph Choate ended up out on the street trying to make ends meet before he had to scram real fast. The two of them make a deal. John Damas agrees to do what he can to keep all this out of, to keep Frank Barzilai out of the newspapers in conjunction with all these events, if at all possible. And if that can be accomplished, Frank Barzilai is to pay John Damas $500. Because think about it, like John Damas is still trying to protect Lola Barzilai from any outside scrutiny, which in this instance means preventing Frank Barzilai and his mistress from getting into that same bit of scrutiny. So that's all agreed between them. John Damas is going to return to his apartment and try and plan things out. But when he gets there, the cops are in his living room. It's Detectives Kopernik and Kopernik's partner, Detective Ibarra. Kopernik is ready to just lay it into John Damas about everything that's been going on. Because they've been in there, they searched his apartment, and they found the hat and bolero jacket that Lola Barzilai was wearing when she first entered the apartment. When she encountered John Damas in the hallway, John Damas had her take off the hat and jacket so that she wouldn't be immediately recognizable if someone did happen to enter into the hallway. And through the course of the scene, he just happened to stow those things in a certain drawer of shirts. But the police have found it. And so they know John Dalmas is in deeper than he had first let on, that he knows something that maybe he ought not to know, or at least if he had known, should have shared with the police. So they're getting into that, and John Dalmas just like, okay, I'm just going to lay it out square. And he tells the whole bit, top to bottom, so that everybody comes in at the same place. Now, what this enters into is that for everyone's best interest, it is best to leave things as they are currently understood. Okay, because the police have already found the dead man in Joseph Cho's apartment, and they know by matching the Joseph Cho's hands to the bruise marks on the guy's necks that Joseph Cho was the man who killed him. They already have Al Tesler, who they know from 2 eyewitnesses killed Joseph Cho. So all that is tied up. There's just these little nagging bits at the end of why everyone was involved in each little bit. But it ends up being in everyone's best interest to do things according to John Dalmas's his thinking. To leave Frank Barcelay out of the newspapers, to leave Lola Barcelay out of the newspapers, just all that section of it, to leave it completely unstated. Kopernik doesn't like this because he's been made a fool of, in his eyes, by believing this yarn that John Dalmas has spun on him, and because Kopernik has already sworn a statement about how he captured Al Tesler. He's in deep, and it's this bit of trouble where Kopernik cannot get one over on John Dalmas without ruining himself. It's this really tense scene where, quite possibly in the scene, Kopernik was going to shoot John Dalmas just out of revenge, whatever happened. But he gets talked down. Ibarra manages to talk Kopernik down from doing anything rash. And so they all decide, okay, the 2 murders can be squared away as just some underworld stuff that's been going on. Everything that's happening with the Barcelays can be left alone. If someone in the DA's office comes sniffing around about it, it'll come out. But so long as they're not told about it, they're not going to come sniffing around. So everything kind of squares away on that end. Now, one important note for that scene in the apartment. It comes to light. They find the pearls that Lola Barcelay was after. There's a little clasp on it shaped like a propeller. Ibarra is pretty knowledgeable on pearls, so he knows that they're fakes. And he relays this information to John Dalmas. This is the first time John Dalmas was told that they were real, that they were worth $15,000 and being held ransom for $5,000. Turns out they're fakes worth about $100. Worthless. That, in the grand scheme of things, worthless. So anyways, at the end, the cops leave the apartment. John Dalmas has the pearls. And he calls up Lola Barcelay on the phone. He says, okay, everything should be squared away. I have your pearls if you want them back. She says, yes, please. They agree to meet the next day, sometime in the afternoon. Early in the morning, which is already like past 3 o'clock by the time the scene goes on. But anyways, early in the morning, John Dalmas goes out to a jeweler. He's trying to find somebody who can get a new string of fake pearls to put on this clasp. There's a bit there. He has to go to a place, and it's a very poor imitation of imitation pearls that he ends up getting, which he returns to Lola Barcelay. The reasoning behind this is that these are fake pearls. John Dalmas understands that Stan Phillips, who had the original string of pearls, knew that they were fake when he gave them to Lola Barcelay, but was just lying about the cost of them in order to seem like a big man. And John Dalmas is in his thinking. This is what I intuit from the scene. In his thinking knows that if Lola Barcelay ever decides that she wants them appraised, that she wants them restrung or put on new glass or whatever happens to the pearls, if some expert looks at the pearls, the cat's out of the bag, and Lola Barcelay will lose her faith in this Stan Phillips. So that's why John Dalmas has the fake pearls made up that he gives to her. He gives them to her, and John Dalmas understands that with everything going on, Lola Barcelay would like to stay in contact with John Dalmas, but that's just not what's best. One, she's still pining after an old lover. One, she's with a husband who in the scene where John Almost returns to Pearl Sutter, she drops the bomb that morning her husband, Frank Barcelay, had said that they're getting a divorce. It was a whole mess. It was a whole mess of the whole thing. Like, she was pining after a lost love, already married to a guy. John Almost just understood that, like, there was no space for him in the picture. You know, he was being crowded out by two other guys. Like, it just wasn't going to work out. So they part ways, and in the classic PI detective style, this guy does all the work, gets no money, doesn't get the girl, nothing. He just kind of left back at square one, minus a little bit of his time and his energy. Anyways, that's the summation of the story as best I can do it right now. Before I sign off, I would like to point out one little thing here, a little passage here right near the beginning. This is right after Waldo, this Joseph Choate, is shot, and when the police come in. It's just a little description here. The prowl car boys came in perspiring. They were the usual large size, and one of them had a flower stuck under his cap, and his cap on a bit crooked. When he saw the dead man, he got rid of the flower and leaned down to feel Waldo's pulse. That's some stuff. I never noticed that passage in the first 4 times that I read this. Still 5 readings in, I'm still finding new stuff. So it's encouraging to know that I'm still noticing things that I just kind of passed over or glazed over in my initial readings. And I like that passage particularly because every character in the story is a character. And that's stuff I can probably talk about more going forwards. But there's no one in here who just like feels like they just hit like this stock role and nothing else. Like, everybody feels like really fleshed out, even just in minute details. People who don't have a lot to do and don't show up again for the story. They have these little details that make them stand out so that you don't imagine them as just like stock policeman number 5 or whatever that. Like, it feels like actual people showed up on the scene. Anyways, that's all I have to say about that. I'll talk to you later.